Hey, look, this thing called the internet fucking worked for a change. What's up? This is MC and Matt talking Civil War. We're on episode 26. We're back to the Western Front. So, all right, we all know the end of this movie, MC, but there's no petticoats involved. Wait a minute. Son of a bitch. Memes. Why are you here? Did you bring the petticoat?
I'm sorry. Hang on. Before we begin, I have to say spoilers.
yes. Spoiler alert, people. Spoiler alert. The South doesn't win this one, guys.
Oh, I heard you talking about the internet. Oh, we're playing it with if we had the internet, dude. If we had Instagram, would the South have risen?
Look, Billy.
I don't. Oh my god, dude! I can see there's Ulysses S. Grant. Oh look, here's Robert E. Lee taking a selfie.
Don't knock short term. Short
yeah, I can just see. You can just see him. Washington going over to Delaware playing Candy Crush.
Abby, yes, that's amazing.
I crush these candies on Halloween night. Wait, no, it's Christmas. Oh, I can't.
Oh, God. Memes. You have a new name. Your new name is Billy.
I've heard that reference twice by you. I didn't like it.
You like it? Okay, no problem.
That's a good show.
All right, so long story short, England breaks the blockade, the South gets reinforced, and they win the war, right?
You're welcome.
No, that's not how this plays out.
We're going to go back to we'll do the Wayback Machine a little bit. All right, obviously Lee has crossed the Potomac. They are back on Virginian soil. The eastern sector is back to what it was before. All right. Now, the Army of the Cumberland under Rosecrans.
But it's not, right? But it's not, though. I mean, you want to act like they reset the game board for another game of Monopoly. That's not what happened. No, not at all. Gettysburg, Lee had to leave with his tail between his goddamn legs. When he got back to Richmond, he found out that the Confederacy is now split in half, effectively. Yeah. Once the fall of Vicksburg happens, the Confederacy can no longer get the Texas beef in to Virginia, even at the remotely small portions that they were before, right? That's correct. They're losing food and supplies,
right?
Armaments, ammunition.
But what worse is coming. Worse is going.
Yes, worse is coming. And this little march through Georgia.
Well, we're not coming close to that yet, right? So what happens now is the Army of the Cumberland, which has been now plussed up, starts to move under Major General Rosecrans. Now, Rosecrans is an effective commander.
What a shit, anyway.
But he's an excitable commander. Okay, which means when he gets excited, he talks real fast and he stutters and so forth.
Is that what you mean by excitable? Because I was going to say, I think I know what you mean by that, but please do go into a little bit more detail. Is he jumpy? You know what I mean? Like if something pops off, is he jumpy or does he hesitate?
No, he doesn't. He doesn't hesitate. But the problem is he starts to speak very, very quickly, very fast, and he has another bad habit. And that bad habit that he has is he micromanages. Okay, his men dearly love him. The problem is that his commanders don't like the fact that he micromanages their commands. All right, so they have a hard time. He doesn't ever establish a decent rapport with any of his subordinate commanders, and this is going to have really bad effects in the upcoming events. So he starts to move. Now, his goal, all right, is to take Chattanooga. That's his first goal, and opposing him is Braxton Bragg. So the problem, of course, that Bragg has the same problem that Lee has, that the Confederates always have, which is they're way, way outnumbered. All right.
Okay, they could be way outnumbered, but Braxton Bragg is a shit general. Everybody fucking knows it. I will trade you Braxton Bragg any day of the week if we're setting up this board game. All right, we're gonna play this like it's Risk. I'm giving you Bragg at the beginning.
Hold on, because
I'll take Sheridan for God's sake. Trade me Sheridan for Bragg.
No, if I'm going to trade Sheridan, it's going to be cavalry commander, and I get Bedford Forrest.
No, you can't have Forrest. No.
Okay, I mean, you want to play this. He has Bedford Forrest is his subordinate. Okay, so what he's utilizing Bedford Forrest for is actually very good and bad simultaneously. And what he's
Forrest
doing,
didn't like Bragg much, did he? Right.
No, he absolutely hated Bragg.
Well, I was going to say, I thought I read something somewhere where Forrest was not a big fan.
No, because and we'll get into why. All right, as what happens is he's using Bragg or using Forrest to do raids and so forth and against the supply lines of the Army of the Cumberland and the Union forces. And to some degree, these are effective. Unfortunately, he's not using them for intel work. Now, part of that is also because of Forrest. Forrest is not he's an overly aggressive commander. He wants to go in there and attack. He literally hates he hates the Yankees.
I would say he does. He does hate the Yankees. Absolutely. And I would say God, he's like fucking Bloody Bill. He doesn't give a fuck, right? Like he's riding up.
No. He's not Bloody Bill. He's not Bloody Bill Anderson. But at the same time, he is a very capable commander on his own. But he's a true cavalry commander. All right, he in a larger sense, running larger battles and so forth, he's not going to be nearly as effective. But for what he is as a cavalry commander, he's an effective cavalry commander on the attack. The problem is that you don't always need the attack. You need to have accurate information about the dispensation of your enemies. You're supposed to be using these guys as scouts as well. And because Forrest is always on the aggression, he's always on the attack, he's not used effectively to monitor very well what Rosecrans is doing. And Rosecrans, as a result, is able to constantly flank Bragg.
Well, real quick, okay, so you said he's not being the eyes and ears of the Army. What the same thing I'm hearing is what happened with Stewart last week. What we were talking about with well, I guess it was 2 weeks ago now. Like day 2 of Gettysburg. Where the fuck Stewart? That's the motto of day 2, right?
Well, but Stewart wasn't sent to raid. This is the difference. Stewart went on a ride, but he always was trying to feed intel to Lee. The problem at Gettysburg is that he was actually prevented from doing that. In this case, it was more Bragg is sending Forrest to go do what he wants, which is go raid just to get him basically out of his hair generally. All right. So here, I'm sharing. I think you can see this right now. This shows
you're good. I got it presented to everybody too. So
okay, this shows you where Rosecrans basically starts off, and as he starts to move his forces, all right, in an effort to take what they're headed for is Chattanooga, all right. And why is Chattanooga? You can see why Chattanooga with all these rail lines. Okay, this is why
and it's right there. It's right there on the border too. You got Tennessee, Alabama, and Georgia all pretty much meeting right there. Right. It's very strategic. Yeah.
So what you see here is you're seeing the forces as they come in there. They basically push Bragg all the way to Chattanooga, and then because of this flanking maneuver there, Bragg leaves Chattanooga.
Why the fuck did Bragg allow them to cross the fucking Tennessee River? Why? Burn the bridges down behind you and don't let them fucking cross the Tennessee.
You can attempt to do that, but they just build the bridges back. It's not like the wind just sits there. And in fact, it is due to this pontoon bridges that actually comes to his advantage coming up. Okay. So you see where Braxton Bragg has been pushed back. Now Rosecrans at this point he's thinking Bragg won't stand to attack. He's thinking Bragg is always still on the retreat. Braxton Bragg though has
how wide is the Tennessee River right there though? Because I'm serious. I'm gonna dwell on this part. Why let them cross the Tennessee? Even if they're going across a pontoon bridge, you could fucking nail them as they're crossing, right? You can take pot shots at these motherfuckers. You don't let them cross. You do not let them across the Tennessee.
You can. All right. The problem is, of course, is you are outnumbered and there's multiple crossings where they can go across.
Fair enough. Actually, I thought about you the other day. I was playing my Civil War game, and I was playing the first Battle of Bull Run.
Mm-hmm.
And once I had the Yankees on the run, I'm like, there you go, MC, run, bitch. Anyway, I just wanted to share that with you.
Trying to relive your glory days. So Braxton Bragg, now this is a major mistake. All right, here and you can see where the situation is right now before we go into it. And Braxton Bragg should never have given up Chattanooga, and his subordinate commanders, including Forrest, right, really lay into him, saying, you know, you're a coward, basically calling him a coward and calling him out. Now, you can blame Bragg to a point in the movements. You can sit up and say that these are strategic movements. You can understand why he's doing it, but once he abandoned Chattanooga, that to me is inexcusable. He knows how important Chattanooga is to the South. He knows that control
and Vicksburg
of the rail line is critical.
Fell, right? Vicksburg already fell at this point.
Vicksburg has fallen. Okay, and so withdrawing from Chattanooga is really an extraordinarily harsh blow. So he decides, okay, after pulling out, he takes so much abuse that he realizes he has to attack, and he turns to attack. This is going to lead to the Battle of Chickamauga. Okay, Rosecrans, all right, is thinking that he's once again got Bragg flanked and he's moving, but these pontoon bridges now it's starting to rain, so it's a little bit he's slowed on this movement now, and Bragg sees an opportunity to attack Rosecrans and destroy him, especially because he has now been promised support, all right, from Richmond, and this support is going to come from the
it's Johnston, right? Don't they send Johnston over?
No, they send Longstreet down.
Okay.
Longstreet's entire corps comes down, and you're going to see some of the commanders, Longstreet's corps commanders, the first ones get there for the first part of the battles. The rest of them arrive, and they arrive right at a really optimal time. Okay, so let's get into Chickamauga.
All right, yeah, no, and as you're loading up the map, I mean, at this point, the Confederacy has withdrawn from Gettysburg. Vicksburg has fallen. The Army of Northern Virginia is sitting partially outside of Richmond, and there's also some people on the Heights and also up in Harper's Ferry, correct? The Army of Northern Virginia is kind of spread out right now. Trying to cover the Shenandoah Valley and all the ways in.
And Longstreet, Longstreet happened to be in Richmond, resupplying his corps when he gets the call, go help Bragg. Okay, and so he's able to move by rail immediately down with his entire corps into this battle. Okay, so this becomes the first part of the battle as the setup begins. All right, you can see the disposition of the different.
I'm not seeing a map. Jensen, voice. You guys seeing a map? I'm not seeing anything.
All right, let me. Sorry about that. Let me try and share it again. I don't know what I'm sharing.
Well, right now it's the void. It's the void.
Let's try that one more time. There.
There we go. Yep, I got you. All right.
All right. So,
Confederacy's in red. Obviously, Union blue for the Union.
Right. So, this goes to the first day of battle. Right. This is a 2-day battle. As you can see. The forces under Rosecrans are spread out all over the place. Up here, you see the Union cavalry gets routed by Forrest. All right. You see the movement of Wilder initially getting pushed back by Hood's corps, which has come down. Hood being one of the commanders under Longstreet. All right.
Yeah, and Hood's actually not bad. Everything I've read about Hood, he was actually a pretty decent commander on the field.
Up to the point where, I mean, he wasn't a Lee. You got to understand that he wasn't a Lee, but you'll see this later. Hood's name comes up later. All right. So what you have now is the Union. This is becoming a median battle. Thomas is here. The first day of battle. All right. You can see that Wilder has been pushed. This, however, is very important in that this road here hasn't been inundated. If they could have pushed him completely over here, these forces here were going to be in the wind, and you could probably have defeated these in detail.
Well, and that's the Lafayette Road.
Yeah.
Is that what I'm reading here?
Yep.
Lafayette. Okay. Yeah.
All right. Now this becomes important later on, as you'll see as the battle progresses.
Can I ask a quick question? Not to interrupt. Right. Hood and Bragg are both generals in the Confederacy, yes?
Yes.
Okay, then why are Forts Hood and Bragg named after the losers?
We have a Fort Lee as well.
Yes,
we have a
why
fort.
are you naming this after losers?
We also have a Fort Jackson. Because
it's really
people were brave commanders from the United States forces, and we recognize that they were United States generals.
Well, yes, no, but they lost.
Well, no, and that's the really
interesting
end. If you look at the forts around, especially in the southern United States, a majority of them are there's even a Fort Bragg, and I fucking hate Bragg.
There is a Fort Bragg. But there's plenty of forts also in the South that are named for the Union generals.
There's not a Fort Sherman, no, dude.
There was
Fort Sherman outside of Georgia.
There used to be a Fort Sherman, and there used to be a Fort Grant. They no longer exist, but they did at one time.
What states were they in? I'm curious.
I don't remember off the top of my head. I'll be honest with you.
Okay,
I do know that they did exist at one point. But
I'm
you
just saying, if you still have
a Fort Meade, for example.
Yeah, but if you put a Fort Grant right outside of fucking, I don't know, Charlottesville, South Carolina,
you have Fort McPherson in Atlanta.
Oh, okay, fair enough.
And you're gonna see the name McPherson during the Battle of Atlanta.
Well, do we have to talk about that?
We're going to have to get to that sooner or later. It's a little ways away yet, and This is the last big battle that the Confederates win. So you kind of want to move on here. This is a victory for the South.
Yeah, actually, no. And if you see the way Forrest is maneuvering, he's actually turning the flank on Brennan, at least, right?
Well, he is, but as you can tell, he comes in and is repulsed because, quite frankly, he's a cavalry, and there's more forces here under Thomas's 17th or 14th Corps that's able to repulse him over time. They're able to hold this line. There's a reason why this guy gets a name. All right. But as you can see, this becomes the disposition, and you can watch how this battle basically develops. All right, as it comes through, and Rosecrans at this point begins to start trying to micromanage the battle and describe where each and every unit goes, and you can see what the results become.
Right. Go back one map. Right there. It looks like the Union, if they played their hand right, and brought Sheridan through, they probably had the Confederates at this point.
Actually, what has happened is Rosecrans has left this area open because he's ordered these guys out of this position, and they are now in danger of being split.
Well, no, it almost looks like the Battle of the Bulge. You know what I mean?
But the forces here, once again, one of the problems with these maps is it's not showing you the relative strengths of these forces. Wilder, Sheridan, all these things are nowhere near the size of Johnston's and Hood's. Plus, notice these guys; these are all coming online. There's a huge areas of reserves that they can use to push these guys back. And Longstreet finishes the battle because once he arrives, they just blow open this entire area, and Rosecrans has to basically run. Now, you see here that they try to block off, all right, the Lafayette Road. They are pushed out of there by Thomas, where they reestablish these lines and then are able to basically escape going up this road.
Well, no, and that's interesting. accidentally, like a picture of a old log cabin jumped up. You see how small that place is. I mean, I just wanted to throw that out there. Like, to live in something that tiny would be interesting. But no, looking at the map, if they could have cut off the Lafayette Road, then they could have beat this army in detail. Rosecrans has to run northwest.
Yeah, they basically go around. They basically at this point are forced back into Chattanooga, and forced. Now, if Thomas had not created this rear guard action, right, all of these units could have been destroyed in detail. And you see, Wilder here is actually captured.
That's what I was going to ask. Wilder's captured, right? Because he's behind the lines. Like, Wilder's done.
Yeah. But it's important because when you have Union forces out in an area like this, okay, it causes your troops to be nervous because you don't know where the enemy, is coming for an attack from a flank. And flank attacks are the most devastating because your forces aren't in line to repel from a firepower standpoint. They can bring a lot of amassed firepower on your troops when your troops can't fire back.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And like, I made a joke about it, playing that game, but like, now that me and you have been doing this series for quite a while, I went back and played that game, and I played it totally different. I'm extending the line. I'm trying to freaking get a flanking maneuver. And I'm actually playing the game, more correct, more like they would actually do it. Like if Hindman,
how much more effective is it?
A lot more effective. Yeah, dude. First battle of Bull Run, nailed it. I'm like, yeah, this is great.
Becomes easy when you know what to do, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But I mean, Wilder's captured. If Hindman could have extended the line a little bit, he might have gotten Stedman there. And if he gets Stedman, he wraps up Brandon, and the whole line falls.
Thomas is in control of this line, and there's a reason why he's called the Rocket Chickamauga, because he basically saves the Army of the Cumberland because of his stance here. And they are able, once night falls, okay, they're able to pull basically back, and almost all the Union troops make it into Chattanooga. At which point Bragg basically starts a siege operation against Chattanooga. Now, the problem that Bragg has with the siege operation against Chattanooga is very simple. He doesn't have the massive military forces or the ammunition, all right, to properly invest the city. But it is effective. Before people start harassing Bragg about that part of it, it's still effective. The Union troops, their rations get cut drastically, and they start to suffer. Their belt notches, they start putting little holes in their belts as their bellies tighten, and they're losing weight, and they're basically calling them Bragg notches and stuff. So they do start to suffer deprivation until, of course, Grant and Sherman arrive.
Well, I mean, we don't need to talk about Sherman and Grant the Butcher, but
What a joke.
You like that? Yeah, Grant the Butcher. I like that. Okay, so here's the thing, though. This is like the only battle Bragg ever wins. So,
yes.
Gotta give the devil his due at this point.
He does win the Battle of Chickamauga, and a lot of it has to do with the mistake that Rosecrans made, and the fact that Longstreet's attack comes right at the same time that Rosecrans had opened the hole in the line.
Why does Bragg get the credit for this battle and not Longstreet coming in from the Army of Northern Virginia?
Because Longstreet is the subordinate commander in the battle.
No, it's not.
Really?
Yes.
Longstreet's below Bragg at this point.
Yes.
Which is hard for me to fathom, actually.
Longstreet is a corps commander. All right. Bragg is an army commander.
So the Confederacy thought of Bragg like they thought of Lee. Is there any reason for that? What gave them such?
Yes and no. All right, because he has run an independent army command. All right, so he's an independent army commander. Of course, Lee at one time was the general in charge of all the military forces in the Confederacy. All right, which is more of a chair kind of a at the time. Initially, it was going to be thought of as kind of like a Secretary of War kind of environment. All right, but Lee was better as a battlefield commander and understood it, which is why he took command when Johnston had been injured. All right, when he took the army of Northern Virginia.
Well, no, and thank God. I couldn't imagine them bringing Bragg from the West into the army in Northern Virginia and having him lead it. I think the war would have been over 2 years early.
That's a possibility.
I really don't like Bragg, if you guys can't tell.
Bragg himself was from a tactical standpoint, he actually wasn't bad at tactics. The problem was that he himself was so abrasive, and he was this is a commander who basically constantly fought with his subordinates. He didn't listen to his subordinates,
and he didn't know how to. He didn't know how to place them in a position. Sorry to cut you off, MC, but he didn't know how to place them in a position to actually do the best good for his army. He would have people like Forrest working with people that they just didn't get along with at all. Yeah, I mean, it was ridiculous.
He was like that. He was also very much in the political, having a political mindset. All right, he was a friend of. He was a good friend of. What's his name, Jefferson Davis.
Yeah,
right? And he did constantly send reports, backstabbing little reports back and forth about how great he was and how freaking belittling his subordinate commanders, including the one he hated the most, which was Forrest. And he had a lot of disdain for Forrest simply because Forrest was a commoner. Forrest was someone who came up through the ranks, established himself. He was not part of the Southern aristocracy in and of itself. He basically was a self-made man. And he, in some ways, while he aspired to be a Southern gentleman and expected the other people in the South to ask that. No, go ahead, Voice. You want to ask a question?
He asked it earlier.
Oh, did he? Okay.
Yeah.
If he wanted to be considered, part of the aristocracy of the South, well, he was never treated that way. And Bragg, who only respected, and this is very unfortunate, but Bragg really only respected someone if they came from West Point, and obviously, Forrest had no such pedigree.
Well, so, even VMI, Virginia Military Institute, wasn't good enough for Bragg. VMI, no.
No. He only respected other people that he had known growing up through the Mexican War. All right.
So people like Lee, Longstreet, people like that.
Right, but he still had a very abrasive nature even with them.
Yeah, I don't see Bragg and Lee actually getting along that well. Lee seems to be more self-contained, where Bragg was more bombastic and very outspoken.
And but Bragg was also he was ambitious and he wanted to rise. He wanted to gain fame. I mean, and of course, this isn't the way to make you don't gain fame by constantly retreating, by constantly leaving, getting outflanked and retreating. Now, like I said, at the beginning part of that, where he's getting outflanked, is Rosecrans is outflanking him. That is happening, and he doesn't have a choice because he doesn't have the troops to actually stop Rosecrans. That's all true, all right. But the problem is that when he left Chattanooga open, he caused major disruptions in the ability of the South to actually, utilize the few railroads that it had to run supplies up and down. Now, in order to get supplies, you literally had to shift your rail lines all the way into North Carolina to get up to Virginia. So if somebody from Georgia, for example, wanted to send food up to the Army of Northern Virginia, now instead of going from there to Tennessee through Chattanooga straight into Virginia, you now had to go from like Atlanta over to Savannah, over to South Carolina, and then up to North Carolina, and then up to Virginia, extending your lines and making it, obviously that much more difficult to supply the troops. This was a huge mistake, especially, and he did catch a lot of hell from the South saying, when's he going to stop? When's he going to fight? So then they have the big battle of Chickamauga. His star rises. Oh, great! He's now going to take Chattanooga back, but no.
No, and you're right. He doesn't take Chattanooga back. Spoiler alert. But the thing is, though, as well, is the Union really beat the Army. They beat the Confederacy by stopping our ability to conduct a war. If you can't move supplies from one area to another via the railhead, when the Union can quite freely, even in captured territory, move their fucking supplies along, you have a goddamn problem. So sooner or later, Bragg had to stop running, and he had to take the gloves off and fight. And the thing is, he didn't have the fight in him. He might have won this one, but how many battles are we going to talk about later on where,
Well,
I mean,
there are some. He does a decent job in blocking movements to deny Sherman the easy take of Atlanta. He is able to block,
which is why Sherman burns Atlanta to the ground. Is because he was
but Atlanta gets burned to the ground for a variety of reasons. Not the least of which is another incident that's going to happen toward the beginning of the following year. And this is all taking place in 1863. In 1864, several things happen, including Fort Pillow.
We'll get to Fort Pillow. Because I think you and I are going to have a few words when it comes to Fort Pillow.
Yeah, probably.
I don't necessarily think that Forrest was a butcher, but hey, we'll talk about that when it comes. You were down in
genocidal maniac. What's the difference? Potato.
You were down in Atlanta here recently.
Yes,
is there any markers still?
Oh yeah. There's a lot of things in there. Like I said, Fort McPherson is in Atlanta, and if you get a chance to, and you get a pass to go to Fort McPherson, I would suggest that you go look at that and look at the museums that are down there, because they have a lot of that. They have a lot of the history. Now, Atlanta has changed dramatically. A lot of the but a lot of the roads that are there are the same general roads that were there during the Civil War. They have the same names. You can start placing fields and names with the way the battles actually progressed and so forth in the cities.
No, that's awesome. And like I've never been to Atlanta. So if I ever went there, even for business like you did, I probably would have went and saw some of the old Civil War sites. That's just the way I am, though. History nerd. Like that's how I've been spending my off time.
Chattanooga, if you ever get a chance to go to Chattanooga, that also has a lot of great sites. Lookout the Battle, Lookout Mountain, and everything are all part of that, and you can take tours.
No, that's cool. There's a lot of pictures of Atlanta after it burnt, though, and it was wasted, man. Like it looked like they fucking hit the A-bomb over Atlanta.
For all intents and purposes. After they take Atlanta, Sherman removes all the citizenry. He orders all the citizenry out of Atlanta.
Yeah, and could you imagine being one of those people? You just got sieged. Your town just got burnt to the ground, and now they are forcibly removed. He does
it before the fire started, and the fires, of course, get totally out of control because there's nobody in the town to stop them.
Well, yeah, no, and we'll get to when Richmond falls. The same type of thing happens there, where the Confederates actually were burning their own munition sites, and it got out of control. We will get to that, and that was not Grant. Grant didn't burn Richmond to the ground. That's not how that played out at all. No. And I could be a dick and try and argue that's how it played out, but I would be a liar.
Now, as much as we're going to get to several other things, not the least of which is Sherman. When Sherman marches through Georgia, everyone talks about Georgia because of Sherman's speech. He's going to make the march that'll make Georgia howl, and since he was successful, everyone focuses on that. But that's nothing. All right, they don't really get out of hand at all. All right, going through Georgia, they do burn a lot of supplies. There are things that get burned.
No, it's when they enter South Carolina.
When he enters South Carolina, the heart of the rebellions, like the people who started it all, basically, the men are out of control. They torch every freaking thing.
They do. And Sherman makes it clear that this is where it all started. He will punish these people.
And what's more is their slaves are helping them gleefully. Okay, this is, I mean, it is a punishment all the way to Charleston. I think it's Charleston. Is that what it is? Yeah,
it is Charleston, South Carolina. Yeah. No, it's really, they make South Carolina howl. I mean, Georgia got the bad end as well, but nothing compared to. But
it's not. You got to remember. Yeah, you can say that Georgia got the bad end of it, but the reality is it wasn't as devastating as what happens in South Carolina. And furthermore, it's not as large an area as people think it is. It's only about a 25-mile wide strip that only goes from Atlanta to Savannah, which is only about 100 miles. All right. So it's not this massive, all of Georgia is burned to the ground. And I'm not trying. If you look
at the picture, man, that's what it looks like.
Well, you see the picture of Atlanta, and Atlanta was at the time of the start of the Confederacy, one of the second most populous city in the Confederacy. I think New Orleans was number one.
Yeah, New Orleans was number one. And they don't bring that punishment to my home state of Louisiana. They don't do it. Maybe because they capture New Orleans fairly early in the war.
Well, but you were complaining about how the women in New Orleans were being treated.
We will talk about that.
I'm going to talk about. What are you talking about?
I am going to talk about Butler. Butler is a cunt. And yeah, I said cunt on our educational thing. Like, fuck that motherfucker, dude. There is a lot to talk about, but when it comes to New Orleans, but a majority of it is backloaded in the Reconstruction era.
Reconstruction is an issue, but Butler is, and we'll get to that when we talk about Reconstruction. But the biggest mistake Bragg made in this whole part of this campaign is that he gave up Chattanooga, even if he would have been surrounded. Okay, the reality is that he was in, because where Chattanooga was, the fact that you had rail lines up to that point made it so that it was possible for Lee to bring down major forces, and they could have coordinated an attack to relieve Chattanooga and forced Rosecrans back from Chattanooga, or at least held out for significantly longer periods of time. Leaving Chattanooga, leaving those defenses, only gave a place for Rosecrans to actually fall back into, number one, and number two, because there's like 3 or 4 major rail lines that went through Chattanooga at that time, it basically hampered a major blow on the Confederacy after losing Richmond. Okay, now for all intents and purposes, the Union controls, all right, via rail and via the ocean, all the southern part up to the point of Georgia. They basically have taken out Alabama. Alabama is now out of the war. Mississippi is out of the war. All right, Louisiana is out of the war effectively.
Yes and no. Up in where I was born in Shreveport, northern Louisiana is still participating. But if you're looking at the South, like New Orleans,
you end up with raids that can take place. Yes, but those a raid has no staying power over a long period of time. The reason,
but the Louisiana Tigers were a thing. All right, I mean, you can't tell me they weren't. There was Louisiana forces in the Army in Northern Virginia. There was also
they retook one of the batteries. All right, temporarily for what, 2 weeks? They closed the Mississippi for about 2 weeks, and then were tossed back out. In the overall scheme of things, how effective were they? They tied down
as a fighting unit were pretty damn effective.
They tied down an extraordinary amount of Union forces in anti-partisan type of campaigns. All right,
and they keep them having to fight them there instead of moving.
So from that standpoint, you could say, yeah, it was effective, but overall, they don't materially add to the South in any real sense.
No, it's mainly our pride. I'll give you that. You're right. It is. It's mainly, especially when it comes to like my home state. You know, the Louisiana Tigers. It's mainly our pride that was able to be held up because we kept fighting no matter what.
But Chickamauga is a major battle. It is a win for Bragg. A couple of things of note here. Two generals get wounded in this battle. Longstreet is wounded in this battle, and so is Hood.
How many times does Longstreet get fucking shot, dude?
He gets
I
shot
mean,
several times.
seriously.
It's amazing that Longstreet never loses a limb.
Right? Like
But
this
at the
guy
Battle
was
of
getting shot.
now remember, Hood lost his arm at Gettysburg, right? Hood loses his leg here at Chickamauga. So
Okay, so this is when Hood actually loses his leg, because later on we will talk in 1864, early 1865, where Hood is leading the last gasp of the Confederacy in the West. That is a thing that does happen. And he is what, on crutches and shit? Like
he's got a
he's
peg
not
leg
doing
and,
too well.
and a missing arm. I mean, he's
Yeah. And no, and I'm looking at the chat. What is up, Tina? Nice to see you here. Yeah, no, this is our Civil War show, so hopefully we won't be as foul-mouthed here. I'm trying to be good. We'll see how that goes.
the problem is he's hungover today.
Oh, hey, a little bit. It was that easy to tell, huh?
Well, your bitterness when we actually tried to start the stream was kind of obvious for everyone.
Oh God. Yeah, that was a struggle. Anyway, as I drink a beer here. Okay. So yeah, Bragg wins this fight. Let's go through what happens though, why it's actually a loss, because it is. You can check this in the lose category because the Confederacy loses ground even though they won a battle. They didn't turn the Union forces around like second.
Well, they did. They actually, because this Chickamauga is south of it is south of Chattanooga. They are forced back to Chattanooga, so this is a victory. They kicked them out of Georgia. This is a big win. All right, it's from here. Later on, from Chattanooga, where Sherman is going to march from when he goes into to take Atlanta. The reason that they wanted, of course, from the Union forces, Chattanooga, was so that they could start their advance on Atlanta. And Rosecrans, that's what this whole thing was set for, is he was moving on. They were now going toward Atlanta. That's where they were headed. So this is a Confederacy. What was that?
I said, well, then it did work. They did have to turn around. It puts off burning of Atlanta for over a year, right?
You could. I wouldn't say it puts it off for a year, but it does delay things by at least 6 months. And it also delays the forces in Northern Virginia from mounting operations.
The Union forces in Virginia. Okay. I just wanted to clarify that for the people watching.
Now,
Confederate forces.
It is at this time that now Lee's forces at this time get their last, for all intents and purposes, are going to get the last of their reinforcements for the rest of the war. And this is important. All right. The Union forces, after the Battle of Gettysburg, all right, they are delayed, not just because of this. They also have to deal with the fact that there are riots in New York City that they have to be suppressed. In the very first action that go ahead.
I wanted to get to that. That's what we're covering next week, right? We're going to cover the New York race riots because that is a big topic and it needs to be its own episode. So
okay, I mean that's not a problem. But the Union forces, while they could have Meade could have immediately started marching directly onto Richmond. And started the once again the On to Richmond campaign. Instead, it is delayed dramatically by two things. One, he has to reinforce, which is not a huge issue for the Union in that they can receive forces from all over, but they've got to retrain new units and so forth. But also because they're dealing with the food riots or the New York City riots.
I would call it the race riots, not food riots. It has to do with the fact that you can buy your way out of the draft.
Yeah, it's a draft riot is probably the best way to describe it because that's how that's really more why it begins. It really doesn't start as a race riot. It starts as a draft riot, but it
But
gets out of
by day 2, they're pulling black people out.
yeah, it gets way out of control. And yes, what happens, of course, is African Americans or Africans or black people are begin to be targeted like the Irish. The Irish target the blacks because they think that they're the ones who are going to replace them as far as work. But we'll get to that. We'll
yeah, no, absolutely. We don't have to dwell on that right now. I'm thinking next week though. That's what we should.
That's fine.
Talk about, yeah.
But so with the Army of the Cumberland backed into Chattanooga and being besieged, okay, the problem that Bragg has is, like I said, is he doesn't have the forces to truly take and surround the city with enough powerful forces to hold it. And he knows that, because if he tries to thin his lines too much, all right, he'll be destroyed. So what he could do basically is he creates some strong points, and then is going out, and anytime the Union tries to get foraging parties, he basically interdicts them with cavalry units such as Forrest. Okay. And this is effective, and it does start hampering the supplies coming into them, and they start to starve. They really do start to starve.
Well, no, and you still have units from Missouri doing the same thing. The whole time the Union is trying, even in their march to the sea, they are dealing with raids upon their caravans.
Well, the march to the sea was we'll get to that. But the march to the sea was because of those raids. It's freaking Sherman just says, okay, let's do this differently. And he does cut himself intentionally off from supplies.
Yeah.
He basically releases his supply lines to go back and deal with it. And Bragg even attempts to, or not Bragg, but Hood attempts to actually force him to go back into Tennessee with that threat to take his troops and march and destroy those supply lines. But he doesn't realize that Sherman has other plans that are going to be far more effective, which is why he marches to Savannah.
Yeah, no, and we'll get to all that. Okay, so Chattanooga, or Chickamauga, I should say. Sorry, not Chattanooga. So this is Bragg's probably his best victory, right? He didn't defeat the army in detail. He didn't cut him off like he wanted to. He got close though. He did do a good job.
He did get close. They almost shattered the entire army of the Northern Cumberland. The Cumberland. The siege operations were demoralizing. The men were quite demoralized until basically Grant arrives with supplies and, of course, fresh troops. So it works. It's effective. It is the best battle Bragg. It's really the only real big battle that Bragg has up to that point, and it is a victory. It's a costly victory in that, once again, like I said, Hood loses a leg. All right, Longstreet is wounded again. And so from a leadership point, all right, it's a negative. Rosecrans has a nervous breakdown because of the loss. He's absolutely despondent. He gets replaced and sent to Missouri, actually, for the rest of the war when Grant arrives and replaces him. So, but at this point, the South is saved, all right? There's not a march on Atlanta, all right? But what is happening in the South, in these larger cities like Atlanta and so forth, is they're losing population because men have gone off to fight and they're not coming back. Okay.
Yeah. Well, they're dead. I mean,
they're either dead or they're imprisoned. They're slowly losing population. All right. They're doing what they can, but the city, which was the other reason that Atlanta is so important to the South, is that it is also, like Richmond, an industrial center. All right. So this is why they.
So part of the ironclad, the CSS Virginia made in at least the metal plating made in Atlanta, and then sent south.
North.
Yeah.
The CSS
North, whatever.
yeah. But yes.
Fuck off, MC. Remember, hungover. Fuck you.
But yeah, it is a major metalworks and milling. It has. When I talk about mills, sometimes I'm talking about food mills. That's true. In the outer reaches, in the farmsteads and things like that. When I talk about a mill, I'm talking about grist mills. They're making flour and so forth. When you're talking about the mills though that were in Atlanta, these were machining mills. All right, these were turning metal. All right, these are making cannons. These are making iron works. And so or steel, however you want to put it. All right, so this is a major industrial center, which is one of the reasons why people are heading for Georgia. Now, the Georgians were also similar in regards to South Carolina, in that they themselves were firebrands. They were not worried about a confederacy. They wanted a war, right? Partly because they never thought that war would ever come to them. They thought that they were powerful enough to hold off an enemy however they wanted to do it. Yes, they understood. They were yes, they were quite arrogant. And it does come back to haunt them.
Well, yeah, no, I mean, and once again, like my home state of Louisiana, where I was born, they fall fairly early in the war. South Carolina, that's the last gasp of the Confederacy at that point, and it's do or die. And well, we know how it plays out.
Yeah, there are no spoiler alerts. As much as you want that to happen, there are no spoiler alerts.
Yeah. There's no comeback of the century here. It ends pretty badly. Here's the thing, though. Okay, so Bragg, he pushes them out. Now, why exactly doesn't Bragg follow up that with another assault and try and keep pushing? Why does he just fall back into position and take a breath? At this point,
why doesn't he assault Chattanooga?
Yeah.
Okay.
City.
Because the breastworks and so forth, you're charging into defensive positions that are entrenched with heavy weapons. That's why. All right. Yeah, you were able to push them, but and that sounds all well and good. All right. But the problem is now you're going against breastworks that are heavily defended. Now you can take some of the strong points. All right, you can take Lookout Mountain and so forth, but the problem is you don't have enough troops to truly go after it and carry through an attack. So if he had sent an attack in, all right, against Chattanooga, he would have been beaten back very badly. And at which point, either way, the moment he did that, okay, he would then end any chance of a siege. You also got to remember this: while he's got the Army of Cumberland bottled up in Chattanooga, it can't go anywhere. But if he attacks and fails, it's free to do whatever it wants. So
good point.
So to attack Chattanooga would have been extraordinarily risky, and probably wouldn't have worked.
I don't know if it would have worked or not. When I think of Bragg, I think coward. I think somebody who couldn't push through and didn't have the will to fight. Wouldn't take the gloves off. He'd rather run and fight tomorrow than stand and fight today.
Well, he was the problem that Bragg was is that he didn't look or try to come up with an opportunity like Lee did, right? And say, okay, I've got to make my own opportunities. I've got to create situations, all right, to carry through. It became just like a set piece battle. As you go from here, you go from there. You do this, you do that. You do this, you do that. From a standard tactical standpoint, he wasn't a bad commander, but he wasn't great when it came to original thinking. And he didn't, because he couldn't get along with his own commanders, because he was constantly at war with them, right? He couldn't rely upon them to come up with any better plans either, because he himself always wanted to make sure he was in charge. If somebody else came up with a brilliant plan, well, that was your plan. That wasn't my plan. It was a lot of his own hubris that caused a lot of it. It's not that he was personally a coward. It's that his own personality worked against him at the wrong time.
He didn't know how to delegate power correctly. He didn't know how to work with other people. All right.
He truly didn't, and he also felt a bit slighted when he was given the position. He felt he had been slighted to begin with. He felt that he should have been given a far more important role.
What do you mean far more important? You're running the Western Theater of the Confederacy. What's more important, the Army of Northern Virginia? Sorry, you're no Lee, sir. Sit down.
Well, while that may have been true, I mean, he wasn't Lee, but he wasn't Johnston either.
I happen to like Johnston. I give Johnston a lot more credit than I ever give Bragg, to be honest. Am I wrong there?
When Johnston replaces Bragg, the result is the same. So,
I think if Johnston would have had the Western Theater from the outset, it would have been a lot different. I don't think he would have been pushed into the position that Bragg was pushed into.
Well, he was. You got to remember, he was given the position in the East. The reason that Johnston is available is because Lee takes over his command after he is wounded in battle.
Yeah, he gets injured. He gets shot in his left arm, right?
Was it his? I thought he was shot. I thought he was shot more seriously than that, actually. But it could have been just his left arm. I don't think it was just his left arm, though.
Oh, okay. We talked about that weeks ago, so I would have to look it up again. But I thought it was his like left shoulder or left arm. I thought
it could have been his shoulder, but either way, I mean, you got to remember these battles were horrifying events. All right, I mean, you get shot. People think that it's like today, where modern technology, you get shot, and the most you have is if you survive it. All right, I'm not saying that getting shot is a trivial event, but the most that you get is like a little scar, right? But getting shot with the kind of balls that they were doing at that time, if it hit a limb, the limb was gone. If it hit your leg, you were losing the leg. There was no repairing the leg. You were losing the leg.
No. Okay, so the way I think of it is if you're looking at a 9mm, all right, that's mainly going through and through. So you get shot in the arm with a 9mm. Even if it hits bone, it goes straight through the bone. Yes, the bone fractures. You know, ballistics. You know what happens, but the bullet exits out the other side. It goes clean through. When you got hit with a solid shot musket, a smoothbore, even rifled for that matter, you got hit with a chunk of lead that when it impacts the bone, it smashes and just destroys it. And that's why you ended up with so many amputations, right?
They're correct. There was no way to the bone is sticking out. What's left of the bone shards are shattered into smithereens and sent through the rest of the body. All right. I mean, that's really what it is. So if it hits your arm is basically blown off.
Absolutely.
It's just hanging there. All right. Yeah. It may not actually be by itself, but for all intents and purposes, it is, because a 2-inch chunk has now been removed of bone. All right. That have been blown out the back of your arm.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's actually quite frightening to see the injuries. And could you imagine being a surgeon on a Civil War battlefield hospital? Oh my God, dude! You thought MASH was bad?
No, it was horrible.
In Korea than in Gettysburg.
Well,
you know what I'm saying?
Of course. And training for tourniquets and things, these were all at the early stages. A different Johnston dies because he isn't. They're not able to apply a tourniquet on his leg. All right, at Battle of Shiloh, which we had talked about. This is something that's actually trained. Soldiers are trained to do this now. In the military, every soldier receives certain types of first aid training, and how to apply a tourniquet and how to successfully keep a tourniquet applied. All right, is some of that training that goes on.
Well, no, absolutely. And it's actually before you had said something about it on a different episode. I didn't know this, right? But even when you apply the tourniquet, you have to relax it every 20 minutes or whatnot. Like
between 10 and 15 minutes, you want to relax it just temporarily, all right, to let the blood at least flow a little bit, because if you leave it there, you end up basically killing all the blood flow to the lower part of the extremity, and you might as well amputate the extremity anyway. So you just release it for 30 seconds, 40 seconds or so to let the blood flow in there as much as possible, and before you tighten it back down again.
Yeah, absolutely. Or else it'll just cut off all circulation completely and you'll have to amputate the limb. So
Gangrene can set in, all sorts of bad things can happen. And of course, medicine is during the Civil War is not like it is in the First World War, which is not even close to what it was in the Second World War or Korea or anything else. I mean, there are massive medical advances. It's hard to describe. I mean, people died of simple cuts back in these days. You got to remember this. One of the most feared things, to be honest, in this battle.
When was penicillin invented? That's why I'm cutting you off. It's because antibiotics.
I think it was 1898.
Okay, so yeah, well after this war.
I think penicillin is 1898 or 1878. Either way, it's way after the war. Penicillin is I think Fleming. Let me look at that. Let me quickly Google.
Okay. Well, while you do that, Jensen, man, you've been quiet the whole time. Where the fuck was the British? Like, why don't you come help Bragg out, you son of a bitch? Like, you know.
Honestly, if I'm actually going to look at this as a political statement, not as a friendly to the South, as I would normally define myself, no offense, but the South was screwed. Britain would have been pulled into something it didn't want to be involved in. Sorry, dude. There is a point where backing a losing horse doesn't work.
Oh yeah, all right. Well,
sorry.
1928 was
sounds.
Penicillin was actually discovered in 1928, so it's not even
not
even available for the First World War.
Holy shit, 1928! I didn't know that. Damn.
Yeah, I thought it was earlier than that. I thought it was in the early 1800s. I didn't
like it was just some fucking mold. I mean, how long did it take you guys to figure out about fucking mold?
Well, it was a mistake to begin with on the mold, so you can imagine. It was discovered on accident, so.
Yeah, well, you know, all the best things are discovered on accident. You know, fucking LSD, you know, penicillin, stuff like that. Okay, so Jensen, no, it sounds like the French have more of a backbone. I mean, look at the American Revolutionary War. You think America had a chance? Why the fuck would the French think America even had a chance in that war? But they backed us. And the British, what did you guys do?
With all due respect, Mad Dodge, what was the result of the French backing us?
We won?
Well, we won, but what happened to France?
Well, I mean, guillotine, all sorts of great innovations in
butchery and science, like the guillotine.
No, you know what though? I was watching a thing about the French Revolution the other day, right? And this guy, he was a scientist, and he was gonna get his head chopped off, right? And he's like, "Hey, man, they're gonna kill me. I already know it. I want to do this experiment. I'm gonna blink as many times as I can after they chop my fucking head off." Like, and so they chop his head off, and he blinked 22 times in 15 seconds. So the idea is after your head is chopped off, you're actually still there for about 15 seconds. Could you imagine having, like, okay, bam, now your head's chopped off. Next thing you know, you're floating in the air looking at the crowd cheering. And that's the last thing you see. Fuck that noise, dude. The French are fucking heartless. Fuck.
So you wanted the British to go down the French route. Is that what you're trying to say?
Well, I mean, they can cut their own head off and they're good.
I don't think that the British made the wrong choice here.
Well, you're a union lover anyway, you blue-bellied motherfucker.
I don't think it would have changed the fact that you would have lost the war either, because the British support would have been tepid at best.
Oh, if they broke the blockade, I keep going back.
They would not have broken the blockade, though.
They can. They had the power.
No, they can't. That means they've got to pull their. That means they've got to pull their forces that are dealing with the situation on continental Europe. And if they pull their forces away from dealing with the situation in continental Europe, what happens to them? You act like the British, have a fleet of ships, all right, whenever they want, and that however many fleets they need, they already have them. It's like they pop out of the air. Oh, there's a fleet. All right. Well, there's no one over there. They can just teleport.
That's what they do, right? Is they just build ships? I mean, they're an island. What else do they have to do?
And where's Cabbage at? Cabbage will tell you a thing or two about the fleets. Good God, what do you think they could? You think that these things just come out of nowhere?
Hey, you know,
and what's worse,
they built us 3 ships. They were good ships. I figure there's more where that came from. There, Jensen. Get on.
And again, I bring back profit margin. At the end of the day, yes, maybe we could have, but what
you dirty
would
capitalist. You dirty capitalist. No.
Coming from the guy who loves the Ferengi. Screw you. Right.
Okay.
Wow. Hey, all right. No, I'm getting under Jensen's skin a little bit. This is fun.
Well, he's right. Coming from somebody who's a Ferengi lover, you gotta give him credit for that one.
Hey, okay. First off, what's not to love? I mean, women have to be naked all the time. Fucking sign me up. All right. I mean, it sounds like a great culture. I'm totally
okay. Hey, all right. You say sign you up. Do you remember what they look like? You want to see that naked? Just saying. Wrong race, dude. Trust me.
Yeah, you want to see Theresa May, and he wants to see Hillary Clinton paraded around naked, Nancy Pelosi wandering around, Maxine Waters.
No. Just stop it. Okay, all right.
You're the one who made the suggestion. You said sign you up. I'm just signing you up for it all.
No, I changed my mind. All right. We're at the portion of the show where we talk about what woulda, coulda, and shoulda happened. Now, MC, great. You guys lost a fight for once. Now you get to say how the Union could have won said fight. How would you have won this battle?
Well,
I would go back and refer to the map where it looks like the Battle of the Bulge, and that's where I would like you to start from. You can start from wherever, but that's I
closed the map, so I'm not sure if I can find it again real quick. But I'm not going to worry about it. The biggest thing that could have changed this battle, all right, would have been if Rosecrans wouldn't have tried to micromanage everything that was going on, and if he would have just sat back and let his generals do what they needed to do. If that would have happened, they would have there wouldn't have been a gap in the line when Longstreet attacked, all right, and that would have been repulsed. That would have been the most significant thing, right? Because that opening of that gap, which almost split their lines, created the situation to where the Army was in trouble. You got to remember the Union forces, for all intents and purposes, still outnumbered the Confederacy. All right, it had the numbers. The difference is with the Confederacy, in many times, especially under Lee, was able to destroy elements of the Union forces in detail because they could bring more force to bear temporarily, outnumbering in a small area of the Union forces and destroy it before the rest of the Union forces could arrive to support it. That wouldn't have been necessary, all right, if Rosecrans hadn't ordered some of the units in a micromanagement technique, right, and would have let his generals do what they needed to do. That's all that needed to happen to win this battle, or at least change the dynamic of the battle where it wouldn't have become a route all the way back to Chattanooga.
So you're thinking it's a troop placement fuck up?
Oh yeah, well definitely. When you open up a hole in the lines as the enemy pours through because of the orders you create, that's a general screw up. Okay, that's a placement screw up. And the reason it happened was directly because of Rosecrans' orders.
Yeah, but it's not because the South got its ire up and, they pushed through. I mean, battles can change on a dime.
The ability to shift troops, when you're moving troops out of a position, all right, it leaves pockets exposed and it leaves an open flank. If that flank isn't there to expose, I'm not saying that they wouldn't have gotten pushed back. They probably still would have gotten pushed back to a large extent. However, they would have maintained continuity throughout the battle, and in a battle of attrition, the Union wins. You got to
it's
understand
really-
that as you keep wasting your forces against that blue wall, if that blue wall is moving away, but just slowly at a time, and you're getting weaker faster than the enemy is getting weaker, which is what happens, okay, then the force would have petered out and they would have maintained that portion of the field. Overall, it delays things. All right, so with the way it turned out, it delayed the Union's advance. All right,
it extended the war about 6 months, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
it
we talked about that.
extended the battle for Atlanta by at least 6 months. So,
but here's the thing, though. Last week we were looking at Pickett's charge. The Union did not fall. It did not fail. They held the line at Culp's Hill. They held the line at Little Round Top. They held the line in the center with Pickett's charge. This week we're looking at the West, and they don't hold. They fall.
yes,
They fail. If this battle would have been Gettysburg, so much things would have changed, right?
if this was the Battle of Gettysburg, I mean, if you had the same situation at Gettysburg, yeah, it would have been a great freaking Confederate victory.
Do you think they could have taken DC at that point?
No,
I mean, no. You think they would have just fell back to DC?
you don't. I don't
instead
think
of
you
falling
realize
back?
just how fortified DC was at this point in the war.
I believe Richmond was more fortified, but yeah. I mean, that's it. That's all I got. I think Richmond
the difference between Richmond being fortified and DC being fortified is the ocean, the sea. You got to remember, the Union controlled the water. The Union could always resupply from water, and the Union controlled the water. It was impossible.
Which is why we never got Norfolk back up and running. Yeah. I mean, even if we would have taken Norfolk back, it would have been reconquered by the gunships and ironclad. I mean, there was no way to hold the only place that we could build a fucking ironclad.
The best shipyard. It wasn't the only place, but it was the best shipyard that the South had.
It was the best shipyard. You're right. It wasn't the only place. What was the other place? Nolans? Oh, yeah, that fell also.
Well, you still had Mobile, and that fell.
Mobile, Alabama. But that's a river port, right? That's not on the ocean.
Mobile,
so
Alabama,
you got to build.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, all right.
But it falls in 63 as well. So I mean,
63 was a bad year.
63 was a bad year for the Confederacy. Yes.
But okay, so that's how you would have maybe won it. You just actually do your job correctly, which is interesting to hear that from the Union standpoint. There's another thing I wanted to bring up, actually, now that I'm thinking about it. There's only one statue of a Confederate officer in D.C., and that is outside of the Freemasons Lodge, and that is Pike. Why exactly is Pike allowed to have a statue in D.C., but we got to fucking bring out tiki torches to protect a fucking statue in Charleston, South Carolina?
The situation with the Confederacy and the way the Confederacy is described today is atrocious, okay, in a lot of ways. We're not looking at the way the history was actually talked about, or what the Confederacy actually was, and what it meant, or what this battle was, or any of the battles, right? From that standpoint, it is a lot of revisionist history that are trying to use these kind of excuses to say, this means black patriarchy. I mean, you've seen plenty of these people. You saw the Covington thing, right? You saw there's Twitter things about this girl crying because she's trying to explain to this guy that the MAGA hat causes her great fear. Okay, it's that kind of mentality and nonsense rather than a real attempt to understand. All right, to what's going on, and this is one of the reasons why, to be honest, all right, I think we're headed for another civil war, because the left has no intention, and never did have any intention, right, of truly understanding what's going on. They have every intention of saying it's our way or the highway. These SJWs are very similar to creating a very similar situation where both sides, all right, no longer will listen to the other side in any way, shape, or form, and aren't even trying. All right, they're not even trying to describe.
No, well, no, MC, and yeah, let's talk about this a little bit if you still have some free time. I don't know if you got to bounce here soon or not, because this is a Civil War episode. We usually only go an hour. We're already over that, but I think this is a good issue to actually talk about. You're right. If you look at the historical parallel, you did not have the representatives from the South listening to anybody that was an abolitionist anymore at all. They would not talk over taxes. They would not talk over anything. They just shut each other down. You had the incident that we talked about at the very beginning of this whole series, MC, where the man on the Senate floor gets beaten within an inch of his life with a cane. Why? Over abolition? Over taxes? What? I don't even remember. It doesn't matter. It happened. And then you have the same thing going on where now you have people like Tim Pool, of all people. Like, this guy is worse than memes, right? and now he's talking about the next Civil War. The problem is, where's everybody going to fall? I'm a libertarian. I'm for free speech. I will fall where my morals fall. Does that make me an enemy of the state now? I mean, what are we talking about here? And Jensen, you could pipe up now too. Go ahead, guys. Like, roll with that for a minute.
No, the reality is, especially as you're looking at it now, it's beyond what people think it is. Because in some ways, you can draw the parallel of the South, or in this regard, the Southerners believed that cotton was king. There was all sorts of stories. There was all documentation that there's no way that there could be a civil war, and even if there was, the South could easily win it because the world needs cotton. All right. And they were the supplier of the world's cotton. It was hubris on their part, saying, okay, well, the rest of the world would normally step in the North. They would suffer dramatically without cotton. So therefore they couldn't survive without us. All of this.
And you're right. You're not wrong. You're representing the facts completely fairly. Go ahead and continue. Sorry, I cut you off. Yeah. I wanted to say that because, yeah, you're not wrong. That's how they thought.
This was a delusional mindset. Okay. It was delusional. It wasn't looking at the reality. They were intentionally ignoring the reality of what was going to happen. And they were being warned by people that they were intentionally ignoring reality. What you see now from the leftists in this country is the same mentality. They're ignoring reality. They're creating their own fantasies, especially when it comes to people like Trump. They're creating things out of whole cloth that Trump supposedly did. They're running around fear-mongering themselves and scare-mongering themselves because he's going to attack all these people. When I see a MAGA hat, I'm fearful. How can you be fearful because you see a guy wearing a hat? If you're gonna, that's just nonsense. That's delusional. Okay. It's absolutely delusional. You're not looking at reality the way it exists. You're not using your intellect. Later on, if you take a look at that Twitter exercise, later on, this guy asked her, he goes, what should I be doing? I mean, intellectually, the truth is the truth. Facts are facts. And the girl tells him, well, you don't look at facts. You got to go by emotions. In other words, you're living on emotions rather than the facts on the ground. How can you exist in that kind of a mode? You're no longer acting as a human being. You're acting as an animal. And this becomes quite problematic.
Or an automaton. You're just pre-programmed. You know what I mean?
Well, I wouldn't say pre-programmed, but you're easily misled then. You can easily be dragged around by your emotions. When you get yourself into an emotional state, it's easy to get pushed from one area to another because all they got to do is play on your emotions.
Well, exactly. What I've noticed about myself, if I end up losing a debate, it's because I strayed away from facts and I went with the emotional argument. That's when I lose.
But emotional,
if I stick with facts, I win.
But emotional arguments can have a major effect on people. You got to understand, you can win with an emotional argument. You really can't, because people are moved by emotion. They have to sit back and analyze fact. It's not easy to get people. It's easy to connect with people on an emotional level. This is what they do in trials. Is the whole goal of both sides is to make a connection with the jury pool on an emotional level, and then you can lay out the facts as you see them. All right, and as long as you have that connection emotionally, you can dictate where things are going. It's hard to get people to step back, especially in today's day and age where it's not even taught to do this, to step back, put your emotions aside, and analyze things intellectually. That isn't being taught anymore, and it's not getting better, it's getting worse. And we're going down a road. This is why I'm saying we're going to end up with a. So I told Nachi, and I'm serious about this. All we're waiting for, all the right is waiting for, I'm telling you now, is a John Brown figure. When somebody comes back,
I fucking hate John Brown.
There's a lot of people that hate John Brown, but the reality is that he was a martyred figure for a cause. Who went out
not
in
my
a
cause, it's my rebel ass.
In a self-righteous, whether you like it or not, in a self-righteous mode, he went and stood up there and died for the cause and became the martyr.
And he killed for it too, with broadswords and axes.
He did kill for it, and he was executed for it. But it ended.
Hang him high. Hang him again. Can we dig him up and hang him again?
It ended any discussion from the South, though. Go ahead.
No, it didn't end any discussion from the South. The South stood up and said, "Yeah, we hung the motherfucker. We'll do it three more times."
That's not a discussion, dude. It ended discussion. It ended any talk of compromise. It ended any of that.
Well, what were we going to compromise on? Insurrection? Because that's what John Brown was preaching.
Well, that is what John Brown was preaching, an end to slavery.
And slave insurrection. Let's be fucking honest about what he was talking about.
He was willing to use a slave insurrection, but he wanted an end to slavery. So you created a point where it's one side or the other side. You were either pro-slavery or anti-slavery. You didn't have a choice.
Well, no, see, that sucks. Because I am
it might be messed up.
I'm anti fucking.
It might be messed up, but this is what it came down to when you were talking about it from a national political level.
But you're looking at people. Okay, so like my family owns a fucking plantation home and a ranch home in Shreveport. All right, those properties have been in my family for generations. What does that mean? I'm pretty sure you know what that means.
Sure.
Yeah. So what you're talking about though is my people's way of life. And yeah, was it fucked? Yeah, it's 2019. I'm not for slavery, okay? Don't get it twisted. But the thing is, though, this was their way of life. And it had been their way of life since the 1500s when we fucking came over. When was the first colony of Virginia? When was Roanoke? 16 something?
Yeah, 1690s?
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah, fuck the Mayflower, dude.
No, 16. It was in the early 1609, 1608 was wrong.
Yeah, fuck the Mayflower. They ain't got shit on the Southerners, all right?
Yeah, I think 1623 was the Mayflower. So Roanoke had been there initially from 1609 or 1608, something like that. I don't remember exactly anymore.
So what I'm saying though is the Southerners were the leaders of this country, of this Confederacy, so to say. Even look at the Revolutionary War. Yeah, it may have started in Boston, but it was won by Virginians, right? I mean, look at the history of this.
It wasn't won by Virginians. I mean, that's overstating it, dude. All right, the
a little Army, bit, a little bit, but not that much. Is it George Washington, Virginia? Thomas Jefferson, Virginia.
What battlefield did Thomas Jefferson show up on?
Thomas Jefferson won the Battle of Ideas. Declaration of Independence. Anybody?
He was not on the battle. He was not a battlefield commander in any way, shape, or form. So don't even try that one.
Neither was Thomas Paine, but he still won the Battle of Ideas. He still brought new life into what was the revolution or a rebellion. You want to throw the word rebel around. There were some rebels before the Confederacy.
It was a rebellion. All right. It was a rebellion against the British. There's no doubt about that. But I don't think anybody's arguing that point, though, either, are they?
No, I hate the idea of Johnny Reb. No, like it was a revolution, and right now Jensen's
It
people
wasn't just a
still call it
revolution, though. You got
colonial.
to understand that there was a huge difference between what the effects were going to be because of the American Revolution and what the effects were going to be because of the Civil War and the Confederacy. You cannot sit up there and compare the two in what the effect was going to be on the nation, because it was going to destroy the nation. And you cannot, and it was going to destroy the government, and you can't ignore that.
You say destroy, I say create.
No, it was not going to. It was going to destroy the Constitution. You
It was going to
cannot.
create the Confederate
It
States
was
of
not.
America.
It was going to
create
destroy
a
the
new governmental
Constitution.
body.
It was going to destroy the Constitution completely.
No, it was the climax of a.
No, it was going. Whether you call it a climax or anything else, the effect was going to be as if the Southerners won. The Constitution had been destroyed. Period. You can't argue. You can't disagree with this, right? You can't ignore that fact that this was going to destroy the government. Okay, it was going to have far more of an effect, a direct effect, all right, on the entire nation, on how the nation was put together. All right, the very foundations would have been of our nation would have been destroyed had the Confederacy won. To ignore that, to deny that was going to happen, it's just sophistry, dude. It's just absolute sophistry.
I hate to do this, but I have to. When in the course of human events, it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitle
them. And what is that a governing document? Excuse me, is that a governing document?
Are you saying the Declaration of Independence means nothing to you?
I said, is it a governing document? Does it have any force at all in the structure of the nation?
It created the United States.
It did not. All it said is that we declare independence. It said nothing further than that.
We are allowed to cut the political bands which unite us.
They gave a justification, but it did not describe a government. It didn't say anything about the government as far as its basis and its structure. At no point does it even get involved in that. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that the words in the Declaration of Independence aren't important in and of themselves. But as far as a structure for a government, they don't exist. It's not telling you how to build a government. It's not recommending the Articles of Confederation. It's not recommending anything. Just means that we're going to declare ourselves separate from you. That's all it's saying. Okay, it has no other force than to declare independence, which is what it did. This is completely different than destroying the very foundational structure, the Constitution of the United States.
They destroyed the Articles of Confederation and created a whole new constitution without any legal backing at all.
Excuse me, but it did have legal backing. The fact that you don't like the backing or you think that it wasn't good enough only resides from the fact that you don't like the fact what it leads to later on in the Civil War and that you lost. But the reality is that there was a legal basis for it. You just don't want to give it any kind of credence.
I like that. You just don't like it because you lost. That's the basis of your argument right there.
And that is the basis of your argument. You just use the statement that's totally factually incorrect. There's no legal basis. There was a legal basis.
Are we still doing what ifs?
Yes, we are. Go ahead.
Okay. What if America and Britain had stayed together? Can you imagine the empire we would have created?
Oh, it would have been massive. It probably would have been if the British. All right, let me go over some things because there's things that the British could have done that could have prevented the colonies from separating. We could have become easily part of this. Right. The first one would have been if you had relaxed in certain regards to the colonies, the idea that we were colonies. If you had said, okay, well, you're just going to be treated as generally equals early on, all right, and we're going to give you representation in Parliament, if that would have happened at the very beginning, back in the 1760s, if you said, okay, well, now they deserve representation in Parliament, it would have changed the entire dynamic, all right, of where we would have gone. Furthermore, with that kind of representation, then you have to start easing up on some of the other regulations, which means you have to allow the colonies to start building milling machines and moving sections of the Industrial Revolution to the colonies. All of this could have happened. All of this would have happened over time anyway. That being the case, what would have been created very quickly was by the 1860s, by the 1850s and the 1860s, there would have been a full-blown industrial revolution throughout the United States, all right, or continent of North America. At which point, right, when the war happened between France again and England, we would have swept south. We would have there would not be a Mexico today. It would be another freaking 2 or 3 states as you know, that are part of the colonies. We would basically all of North America and Central America would now be under the dominance of the British. There would have been a British Empire. Would have have seized that entire area. All right, there would not be a Canada. It would so the United States would have been one big collage, all controlled or nominally controlled by a small little island in the North Atlantic. Okay.
Well, no,
and a powerhouse extraordinaire.
Well, no, and that's really interesting too, because if you want to play that out to its conclusion, there would be no World War I or II, right? I mean, the balance of power in Europe would have been centered around London. There's no way it would have been centered around Paris or whatever, Berlin. You know what I mean? Like,
no,
the center of power of Europe would be around London, because you would own half the world. I mean,
the land forces, the land forces capable that the British would be capable of then launching, all right, would be that much more magnified. Think about it. The United States would become the land forces for England. They can bring in how many more men into a battle, and with the extra resources within the United States, it wouldn't have been close. Okay, there would not have been British colonies, or French colonies rather, all right, in Africa really at all. They would have been freaking forced out. You got to, if you add Americans to the empire mentality and the empire mode, okay, it would have been an expansion in both directions. This is in actually 3 directions. You would have seen America expand drastically. They would have expanded to the west. They would have expanded to the south. And what's more is we'd have gone across the globe into Africa and expanded it into there. There wouldn't have been French Guiana. There would not have been. Think about the French colonies in Latin America. They wouldn't exist. The Spanish colonies in Latin America wouldn't exist. Brazil probably still would have existed. All right, simply because Portugal for the longest time remained an ally of Great Britain. But all the rest of that,
would Argentina have stayed more or less in line with Germany, especially World War II era?
No,
I don't
never would have came
I don't
about.
think so.
Never would have came about.
You would have had the United States of America that I've suggested that you guys actually do. You don't need a wall. You just need to get rid of anyone on your continent you don't like.
Well, no, Jensen, it's really Jensen. You jest, but it's really interesting.
Who said I was jesting?
If you look at the Confederacy, after the war, as far as they saw it, after the war was over and they were allowed separation, they were going to spread south. They were going to attack Mexico. They were going to attack places in the Caribbean, and they were going to expand southward. And that was their plan the whole time. There's even the Cuba insurrection, right, MC? Bunch of Southerners went to Cuba and tried to help the rebels and overthrow whoever the fuck was in charge at the time. That happened in the 1850s, right?
Well, I don't think it was Cuba. It was what was it? There were a couple of things that did happen.
I thought it was Havana. I thought it was Cuba.
Could have been. But because Spain was in charge of Cuba. The revolution, the Spanish-American War is what actually frees Cuba.
The Spanish are never in charge of anything.
Hey, Cabby. We wondered when you'd join in.
The unrepentant Englishman has arrived.
Well, no, it's great. No, I noticed that. I saw him jump in right when we were talking about the British running the world. I'm like, oh, okay, that makes total sense.
Absolutely sensible policies.
I'd just like to point out, Mad, I'm not actually joking when I suggest that the United States should be totally united. One continent, one flag.
I don't want the Canadians. Okay.
I'll take Canada, dude. There's lots of oil up there, MC. I mean,
There's tons of Canadians up there as well. Do I get to go on a genocide and remove all the Canadians and send them all across the pond to where the original homeland is?
Oh, the Canadian Trail of Tears. You got more.
Man, you get to club Eskimos twice a year.
Yeah. Now it's time for this year's Canadian Purge. All you Americans, get your Canadian gun license and come and shoot some Canadians. Andy Worski, buy one, get one free.
I mean, I'm not saying that all the Canadians.
Have you got a license for that Inuit?
Yeah. You get to shoot Andy, and then maybe you can shoot Beard Barian if you can catch him. Oh, no, I'm kidding.
There are Canadians that I dearly like and love. Don't get me wrong. And for the Canadians that are listening to me going, what the hell, man? It's not that I don't recognize it. But let's be honest. All right, you guys keep giving us your worst elements. All right, we get Justin Bieber. Wonderful. Okay, and you won't even take Cher off our hands for him. I mean, come on. I mean,
and I've got to say, you did, and you also got Mariah Carey. So, yeah, you are suffering.
I'm sorry, Americans, you don't actually get an excuse. On your big-ass statue, it says, give us all your crap, we're good with it.
Actually, no, but what it says on the arse of that thing is made in France.
That code. Now, come on, MC. Was I incorrect in my statement? Does that or does that not, in
hindsight, would the world be a better place if we had done that? Of course. In my opinion, it would have been. But we're dealing with hindsight. We're dealing, that hindsight's 2020.
Sure.
Right.
I mean,
I don't know how it would have played out though. If you really want to think about it, like, could they have kept the American colonies under their thumb, really? Because if it wasn't the Stamp Act, it would have been something else. I don't necessarily think it would have played out all hunky dory.
No,
it could have done if it wasn't for the arrogance. I mean, and it was that we also had a completely insane king. I sent you the. Did you see it?
Yeah, we couldn't get into it though because it's banned in our country.
That's funny.
Just go through a VPN or
Yeah, just open up the Onion browser. You'll be good.
What?
But no, you did have a mad king, but the biggest problem was your parliament, to be honest.
Oh, yeah, well, that's what I mean, because it was the greed. It was it's always the same thing, right? The greed. If it hadn't been for that, and also for some reason they had that odd rule that you couldn't manufacture for yourselves. You had to buy your product.
Yep.
Pre-manufactured over here and then have them shipped over, which doesn't make any fucking sense whatsoever.
Oh yeah, no, and actually, it's funny that you bring that up. That's actually what pushed people like George Washington and Thomas Jefferson over the edge, because the Southern plantation class, the Southern planter class, they owed more than their fucking plantation was worth to the fucking money men in London over import and export fucking duties. So they were like, yeah, we don't have to pay the import and export tax. Fuck them.
It's perfectly reasonable.
Well, for things that we could build here, all right, if you guys would allow for it, all right, and that became.
You could have actually probably made it better there, because I mean it would have been local and you'd have plenty of resources to do it with. I mean, whatever it happened to be, because I mean, what were people really building back then? I mean, it's going to be furniture, housing. I mean, you're going to have, I mean, in terms of luxuries or whatever, silversmithing or goldsmithing or something like that. But I mean, realistically, there weren't that. It wasn't like people were worrying about having a computer or anything.
Well,
I mean,
no, but
it
it
fairly
would've-
simplistic stuff like
No,
wow.
but ships of the line, though, Cabby, even ships
Well,
of
yeah.
the line. I mean, look how much forest we had. We couldn't build our own ships.
Exactly.
I mean,
Yeah.
there's a reason we had no navy.
Are you kidding me? Jesus, what we built, when we beat the Spanish, the Armada thing, and that was with just one new forest. I mean, what you could do with what America had, Jesus, you could have built the biggest navy on the planet.
And what's more is there wouldn't have been, if you would have gotten rid of that one rule. You're right about that, Cabbage. If you got rid of that one rule, you would not have had the forces in America building up that were very anti-British, and
It was
the era
moronic.
it was the arrogance of you can say that it's arrogance, but it's also an aristocratic mindset that caused it. They're colonists.
Well,
we're better than them because they're colonists. They're
oddly
they're
enough,
little
though,
people.
MC, isn't that oddly kind of like the entitlement idea that kids have got now? The sort of
very much
the
so.
Hollywood and the West Coast and the East Coast and all that kind of thing. I mean,
It's very
repeating
much
itself
so.
again.
Yeah. It is very much going along those lines. Which is why another one of the things that when you talk to people like Nachi and you say, and I try to explain to them, we're a lot closer to a civil war than you think. Oh, no. Cooler heads will prevail. Okay, that's a wonderful sentiment, but you want to take a look at history? What does it take for cooler heads to prevail?
Yeah.
They don't always prevail.
MC, I got to stop you right there. Cooler heads will prevail. I'm sure there was some dumbass in fucking Charleston, South Carolina saying that in 1860. No, they don't prevail, guys. We
Not
get
always.
heated and shit happens. Shit pops off, motherfucker. We're going to get it going. And we're looking at it right now. When you have people like Tim Pool coming out and saying, hey, we are inching closer and closer to another civil war, and it is the left doing it. Fucking Tim Pool, of all people, said that. Like, wrap your mind around that shit.
Well, Tim Pool is also one of the idiots that was encouraging this shit.
He's got a head like fucking orange anyway. Why would you trust somebody in a little bead like that? I mean,
look,
looks like it's squeezing his head.
He actually did. I actually called him out earlier today. All right, with this story, okay, about the 58,000 non-U.S. citizens voting just in the state of Texas, right? And he actually did a story on this. But he wouldn't.
Is that why Texas is going purple? I'm sorry to cut you off.
Yeah, it is why Texas is going purple. All right,
they're rigging the numbers.
They found 98,000 illegally registered to vote, right? And then 58,000 of them had already voted previously. So
it's like the dead vote in Chicago, right? I mean,
exactly.
It is what it is.
All right, so he does this story. Tim Pool does this story, right? And I was surprised that he actually did the story. But you know what he wouldn't do? He dances around the fact that this was an example of massive voter fraud. He goes, well, yeah, it kind of happened, and the right's going to read into what it wants, and the left is going to read into what it wants. No, you jackass. All right, this is an indication that we have massive voter fraud going on. And you want to stand there and play the game and defend the left. You don't want to call them out and say, we got a problem here. No. You want to play the game. Oh, well, I kind of want to play the memes game. Kind of try and play this in the middle. At the same time, you're trying to go, but we do need to do things more about these voters. We really got to, get a handle on it. What do you think we've been trying to do? And who comes out every single time to stop it? The left. The people that you claim, Mr. Poole, that you are a part of. That your side comes out every time we come out to this and show you the examples of corruption on your side. You go, yeah, it's corrupt, but I really don't want to do anything about it.
Yes, well, look, but that's the whole point. Tim Pool is a spineless little. I mean, he's a fucking jellyfish. I mean, what is it? Jellyfish, 95% water. So just add 5%.
Yeah, but they have a freaking poisonous sting and they kill things because they're parasitical.
95% water, 5% bullshit. Is that what you're saying?
I'm just saying, just add an extra 5% and get rid of it. You know what I mean? Just give them the extra 5%.
It is shocking when you have something like that. At least I was, I could say that I stand corrected that he at least talked about the story, but he couldn't pull the trigger and going, this is an example of massive voter fraud, and we can't have it.
No, because I mean, as much as he claims that, you know, he really is interested in truth or whatever, when the actual reality and the obvious stares him in the face, he avoids it.
Yes.
So he's not a true reporter. I don't consider him a reporter or, you know, a journalist by any stretch. He's a dude on the internet with opinions, just like anyone else.
And what it comes down to is exactly what I said, is the left is delusional. They're living in la la land. All right. They have deluded themselves into thinking that they see things that aren't there. They're not facing reality. And just like the South, when it came to King Cotton, they're not facing the reality of the situation.
Well, I think Tim Pool might have to learn how to code.
I think he probably does know how to code at least a little bit.
I doubt it. Look at these fucking beanie on, Jesus.
It's come on now. It's a shtick, dude. Come on. Just like my voice affectations that I do when I'm doing my stream. You know, it's a shtick.
Yeah, but why make your head look like an orange?
Because he wants to think. Now, I do agree that it's BS in a certain regard, because he's trying to claim that he's one of the people. Well, I grew up and I remember what it was like growing up in this. This is somebody that is making six figures, probably mid six figures right now. All right, for doing stuff on the internet. Yes, quite probably. Yeah. Think about Sargon. Sargon was pulling in $12,000 just from Patreon a month.
Okay, well, on that note, I do have a Patreon. I also have a Streamlabs, and we sell merch. We got a nice Cabby shirt that says "Shut up, memes." Just shut up, memes. We don't want to hear you anymore. Shut the fuck up. So if you want Cabby's wonderful face on your chest, then go buy a T-shirt, motherfucker.
I thought you were gonna make it onto a pillowcase.
Oh, okay. We can go the pillow route too, Cabby. Yeah, we'll get that done, brother. We can also do cell phone cases, all sorts of shit, motherfucker. We got the merch. No.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was going on such a great rant too, and it freaking. I was going on such a.
Well, yeah, but you've already done Tim Pool. Look, I mean, he's a spent force.
Well, but what I was saying is that he claims that he's, you know, he's one of the downtrodden and one of the poor, and he's not. I mean, like I said, I wasn't just exaggerating when I said he's probably making mid six figures. He's probably making around $500,000 a year.
No, I can't believe it's that.
I can easily believe it's that. I can easily believe with all the other things that he's involved in. Like I said, Sargon was pulling in $12,000 a month from Patreon. That's close to $200,000 just in Patreon.
Mm-hmm.
Holy shit. That's a lot of fucking bread. No wonder Sargon's on.
150,000 in just in Patreon.
Yeah, but is Tim Pool in the same numbers?
Oh, easily. Follower wise, oh hell yeah. Let me take a look at that. Yeah. Well, first of all, he's got a couple of different channels too. Let's look into that.
Well, no, and
he's not demonetized.
Well, no, and he would have to be. He was going off about, I lost $16,000 on Patreon in 48 hours. If you lose 16 G's, you're making 30 at least. You know what I mean? Like, damn.
Well, I mean, if you can just mention it, then you're definitely making more than. I mean, I'd say more than 30. You're definitely got to be up in the numbers.
Yeah, Tim Pool has.
Right.
Tim Pool on one of his channels has 200,000, and then his Timcast channel is going to be probably even more or similar.
Well, no, and I'm subscribed to him.
Yeah, but it's going to be the same people who are subscribing to both channels, so that doesn't mean that he's got. I mean, they're not unique subscribers, aren't they?
Well, no, it's impossible to tell you. That's true. You do have a point there. But he also, I mean, the guy can afford to travel to Sweden whenever he wants. He gets money from other sources. All right, to fund his travels and stuff. He
does speeches as well, doesn't he?
Yeah, he does. And so he's one of the people that's picked to go to like, you know, VidCons and all these other things. All right. That he has been paid.
But just looking at him, he just looks dirty. I mean, he looks like a fucking hobo. He looks like something that you just scrape off the street.
But that's a stick, dude. He's looking that way intentionally. That's part of his image.
It's a good look.
Well, for him, it is. Would you? Let me ask you a question. Would you look like that if you were getting $500,000 a year?
Well, I mean, if it was just a shtick, but then I would definitely dress better after I did my shtick.
Well, you think that he walked around
to the camera off?
Right. I mean, he's an entertainer. Let's be honest.
No, I don't know
and
about
he has
that.
Entertainer.
Well, when was the last time he ever made you laugh? I mean, intentionally.
Intentionally. Whether it's not me, I don't say that. I'm not saying that that kind of entertainment is necessarily my kind. But even news technically is to entertainment, dude. Come on.
Well, like I said, I don't consider him a reporter or anything. He's just a dude on the internet with a camera.
Well, he's a dude on the internet with a camera with a lot of freaking money and a lot of patrons.
Well, yeah, apparently.
So,
well,
I mean,
fools and their money easily parted. We keep saying this.
Yeah, but what my point is with Tim Pool is that he pretends to be something that he isn't. He pretends the world is something that it isn't. He was right about certain things, at least. He does recognize certain aspects of the world that I will admit to. He does know the world is dangerous. And he does believe that these idiots keep thinking that the world isn't dangerous and that they really don't know how
he does, because he's had plenty of death threats.
You know, I mean, so from that standpoint, you can appreciate some of his, you know, I don't hate Tim Pool in any way, shape, or form. All right. I don't respect him in a lot of regards because he pretends to be a person who functions from logic or functions from thought. And in reality, he functions and he applies himself strictly from emotion. That's how he's determined, you know, what's right, what's wrong. It isn't how.
Yeah, but the thing is,
how he feels.
But that's the thing. I don't give him any. But I don't give him any more credence than, you know, for example, I mean, when you're doing your, you know, your afternoon rants, and because the thing is, he never says anything anyway. At least you're willing to commit to an opinion, you know, and state your case, right? But the slimy little fucking weasel won't say a damn thing. It's just, well, I'm not saying, but, and then I'm not, and it goes nowhere. He ends up wrapping himself with his own arse.
Well, because he's denying reality. Take a look at his ones that he did just today. I mean, there's one that he goes, I just can't understand. I just can't understand.
I don't watch him. He just annoys the living shit out of me.
Let's see if I can find which one this is.
I really can't. I don't understand how you
you want to see him at his best as his
no, I don't.
Logical best.
I wanted to see it.
The one where he does. Why does the far left think Muslims support LGBTQ community issues? And then listen to him talk about this in the entire stream. He goes, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to think. I don't know how to apply this. I don't know. He's saying that the Muslims are oppressed and these other people are oppressed and they both got good points and I can't choose between them. This is
exactly. You know what that is. Yeah, well, you know. Yeah, but MC, you know what that is? That's basically that's an NPC having a fucking 401 failure. You know, I mean, this is like
an NPC having a 401 failure. That's pretty good. It's pretty good. I may have to use that. Maybe I'll do a reply and have that thing on the 401, 401.
Sorry, I think it's actually 404, isn't it? Sorry, the proper one.
404? It could be 404. Either way, flashing up there.
Exactly.
Norman coordinate.
Yeah, just NPC, just in an infinite loop, you know, just the go to 10 fucking command.
MC, you might want to have a look at live chat.
Oh, what's going on in live chat? I'll take a look here.
Are there some Tim Pool fans?
Oh God, no Tim Pool fans. But MC sounds like Steve Buscemi. I don't see it.
Buscemi, no.
No, like isn't that the motherfucker that rode the nuke in on Armageddon? Right?
No, Steve Buscemi. He's the weird.
I just wanted to feel the power of the world between my legs, right? Like it's that.
No, weird. He's Steve Buscemi's the shut the fuck up. In the Big Lebowski. You know, shut the fuck up, Donnie.
A little bit like Gilbert Gottfried.
Yeah, he's got a face. It looks like his face melted in front of the fire. Got a weird look.
Are you saying up like the?
That was all.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I just saying. I just thought you needed to see that. I wanted to hear your opinion.
Believe it or not, I've been accused of being a number of different stars, and some of which I'm not going to even describe to you. Yes. For some reason, people think I look like other people that I don't. Because Mad Dodge has seen me. I've been on camera with Mad Dodge. He's seen what I look like.
Yeah, like one of the few times you even drink beer. Like I felt kind of out of place on the last Red Eye where you were actually drinking and I was sober. It was weird.
That was a bit boisterous, wasn't I?
No, it was great. I like it when MC drinks a few beers. You need to do it more often, my friend. No. But,
well, no, you need to do it simultaneously.
I found a decent beer that I do like that they actually brought over, and it isn't of the quality of what it was like when I was in Germany, but it's still pretty good, which is Warsteiner.
Ew. Oh, I like St. Pauli Girl. St. Pauli Girl is pretty good. Right now I'm drinking Henry Weinhardt's Private Reserve Northwest Style Lager. It's good shit.
Lager,
yeah.
Well, not all of us are blessed with the British Isles commentary or
well, IPA sucks, dude. Screw IPA.
No, I like
bitter as fuck. IPA sucks.
Bitter, stout, and mild, the finest.
Bitter, stand, miles. Is that what you call it?
Bitter, stout. No, there's bitter, and then there's stout, and then there's mild. So there's, you know, 3 different sort of.
Bitter, stout, or mild. If I'm going to drink something, it'll be a stout.
Yep, stouts are good. But I'm not into lagers. I mean, lager is much more sort of European thing. It's a lighter beer, and it just looks like a urine sample.
Oh, fuck off, dude. Like, I was taking a drink.
It looks the same coming out as it does going in. You don't want to drink it.
God damn it. No, this is made with the finest Cascade hops, all right? It's brewed
with the finest urine.
Cascade. It's good local beer. It's been around since 1856. Oh, shit. Henry Weinhardt's was before the war. We're sticking with time here. Yeah.
So you're drinking Union beer. Congratulations.
It's a new company then.
Are you going to deny it?
It's like that, huh? Now I gotta put my beer down.
Yeah. Hey, listen.
Can't drink this Yankee piss. Now with Cabby. Yeah, this is Yankee piss. What's going on? But no, it's funny though. If Tim Pool of all people thinks there's another civil war happening, I mean, look at what happened with that teenage kid, right? Let's crucify him at the stake. Why are we lighting them on fire and shouting witch? Anybody? You want to tell me? Like, what's going on here?
They're delusional and they're self-righteous about it. And it's going to continue. Like I said, here's how I foresee things happening. I truly do foresee the rise of some kind of right-wing Jim Brown that goes on some kind of major killing spree, all right, against what he perceives as like he attacks the Southern Poverty Law Center. I'm not suggesting anyone do this. Please do not misunderstand me. I'm just given how I'm worried things are going to happen. Is you're going to see somebody go and do that kind of stuff.
I got to give the disclaimer. The views expressed by the panel of Mad Dodge Productions are not necessarily the views of Mad Dodge Productions or its subsidiary, Red Eye Live or the Mad Libertarian. Everybody's views are their own, not necessarily mine. Nobody is ever calling for a call to action on the show. And if you think so, you're a fucking idiot and go back to bed or smoke another bowl and chill the fuck out there, Steve. Anyway, go ahead.
Okay, so what I'm foreseeing is that an incident like that happening, right? Like a Timothy McVeigh, only more focused on the left, not government, focused strictly on the left. Okay, where they're going after the identitarians, right? For example, I mean, once again, I'm not suggesting this, and I'm just concerned about it. I can see where a group of people attack, right, Mueller and his investigation and go on a slaughter spree there. What will happen because of something like that, right? First of all, the left would go, see what the right is like. See what the right is like. Look at this. You know, we're never going to listen to anything on the right. And people on the right says, yeah, what he did was wrong, but we understand what he did. And at that point, you've got a dichotomy that will never be breached. It will not be breached. And within 10 years, as that division hardens in, because what will happen is the left will ignore all of the things that Antifa does to be violent then. It'll kick off more Antifa violence, and the left won't do a thing about it. In fact, what they'll constantly do is cheer it on and say, we need to support these people, until the right says, we have had enough, and the real war begins. That's what you're.
MC, the left isn't what the Democratic Party was in 1860. The left will not fight. They will not fire first. They will not put them.
Antifa fires all the time.
That's not the left, though.
That is the left. Do not.
That's the fringe.
No, it is not the fringe. Okay. Oh no. Would you see any of them constantly going out and saying, "These are the son of a bitches that are Antifa. We've got to disassociate from them"? Do you see that being major calls by major newspapers saying, we have to decry Antifa, we've got to put a stop to this? Do you see any of them doing it?
Well, no, and here's the thing. What I do see is a lot of people throwing libertarians under the bus, throwing the right under the bus. Since when are libertarians a part of the right, by the way, considering you guys don't like us? Right, MC? You rail against me all the goddamn time.
I put you in the same category. To be honest, I put you in the same category as memes.
Okay. Hey, you know,
no, that's unnecessary.
It's an accurate statement. He's not. The only difference between him and memes is he tends to be smaller government than memes is. That's the only difference between the two.
I think there are certain other chasms.
I'll take my stance. Memes falters a little bit when it comes to stepping up, putting his toe on the line.
To a degree, I would agree with what you just said there. I do have to walk that back a little bit. You are more willing to take a stance. Your stances tend to be incoherent when you try to describe them from time to time. But you do take a stance.
Yeah, no. I don't know. Are we still friends?
That's for you to decide.
To be that honest.
Do you remember what you did last night and how you were treating me?
Oh, what? Come on. He'd been on a 48-hour binge.
I'm trying to make him feel guilty because he doesn't remember last night.
Mad.
He attacked me too, mate. Don't forget.
He attacked me. I need to ride to the liquor store. I need to buy some whiskey. Help me out.
No, he attacked me too, MC.
Yeah, he did. You should be on my side. What are you doing?
Yeah.
Freaking
look.
Yeah, he's all right.
Mad.
It's another day. That's how the British work.
I had him going for just a second, and you jumped in to defend him. I can't believe that. I mean,
shit. I'm gonna stop doing the white knighting.
But no.
See, yeah, but Matt, you see, I've always got your back, mate.
Yeah, no. I love the British. You know, they always show up just in time to give me some from the battlefield. It's all good. Thank you.
See how bitter he is. He's just a bitter man.
He's a sad Southerner in the north.
Yeah, no, it's I don't remember what movie it is, right? But they're like, I think it's A Few Good Men. Oh no, we love you, Navy boys. Whenever we have to go fight, you give us a ride.
That is how the Marines look at it, though, too. The rivalry between the Marines and the Navy is worse than the Army and the Navy.
Yeah, but the Marines are the whores. They'll do anything for anyone.
They'll do anything to anyone, too. So you might want to think about that.
Yeah, they'll pay you.
I don't know. I'm going to keep my mouth shut. I don't want some leatherneck showing up to the stream, and next thing I know, I got a bayonet up the ass. I'm good. I'm golden. Not happening, dude. No. Well, no, and that brings us right back to it, right back to the fucking what we were talking about here. We were talking about the original Civil War, and now Civil War 2.0.
The original Civil War. What?
Well, no, because now we're going into 2.0, right? But what exactly is going to happen? You think the military will back the left? I don't fucking see that. There's more libertarians in the military than there is.
A split with the military will happen. Can happen for a variety of reasons. All right, and you got to understand that. Let's say that you have a really hardcore leftist in charge of as the president, and one group says, "Well, I'm not listening to him," and the other group says they are listening to him. It can fracture along those lines.
It's gonna go like Dr. Strangelove.
No, it isn't gonna go like Dr. Strangelove.
Man, Fiera, I can walk.
It's not gonna go that way. You're not gonna have that happen. But the military, if the military doesn't listen to orders, I can see that happening, where units en masse basically don't, refuse to listen to orders. And what'll end up happening is, and in that kind of a scenario, is the United States will go the way of Rome, where the military becomes the chooser of who's in charge. The military will basically become, for all intents and purposes, a true military style dictatorship.
I can't. No, I'll go straight Brutus. It'll be the Ides of March.
I think you need to read history, because it didn't work out too well for Brutus.
Yeah, well, I'll die for my republic. I don't want a military dictatorship.
So in other words, one example of a loss, let's sit up there and combine it with another one.
Well, I mean, yeah, well, okay, it is what it is. But
I keep picking losing sides.
You have a point.
Even when I know one side lost, I pick their side anyway.
Second Monastic is pretty good.
What were you going to say, Jensen?
MADD really wants to have a look in live chat. He really, really does.
Really?
Oh, no, I looked in there. Okay, anyway, though, the idea of the second Civil War,
there must be something.
The idea of a second Civil War, though, and the military actually, we're not Turkey, MC. The military doesn't dictate who leads the United States of America. It never has.
That's true, but that's only because they believe that the Constitution is more than just a piece of paper. If you destroy the Constitution to where it's just a piece of paper, how are you going to stop them? I've told people this before, and I've said this online before. This shouldn't be shocking to anybody. The United States military is the most dangerous conservative organization on the planet Earth.
Well, Eisenhower said so. He knew it. He warned.
If the only
I'm keeping a copy of
the only thing that stops the U.S. military from taking over is their belief in the Constitution. Nothing else.
I don't even think it's the Constitution. I think it's a document I'm holding in my hand right now.
No,
we hold these proofs to be self-evident that all men.
No, it is not.
That they are endowed by the Creator.
We do not swear an oath of allegiance. Hey, Dingbat, we do not swear an oath of allegiance.
You want to go meathead next? You dumb Pollock.
Right. I'll call you meathead, no problem. You can call me Rob Reiner. That's not a big deal. Right,
okay, ladies, pull your clothes in.
The United States, the United States military swears an oath to the Constitution. It does not swear an oath to the Declaration of Independence.
All right. Well, you know what?
Well, it does by proxy because it was born from the Declaration of Independence.
The Constitution was.
Yeah, well, actually, I said that. Does the Declaration of Independence still have any relevance or standing in?
Yes, there's a reason that I have.
No, it doesn't. It has a standing in the fair ideas of people sovereign states.
MC, there is a reason why I bought the Constitution and it came with the Declaration of Independence and the Articles of Confederation.
I don't care what your reasoning was for purchasing those. You didn't learn any of their lessons, however, when it comes to the governance of the country. No.
That's why I could quote it like verbatim, and you just
went and stood up there and said what the military swears and follows.
I never said the military. I never said that.
You said the military. You said this was important to the military, and it's not important to the military. It's not even
important to the
stressed
American psyche as a whole. It's important to this whole idea of a second civil war. Some of us still care about our founding documents, MC.
Whether you like it or not, it's the structural documents that make the difference. And whether you like it or not, the people who
but I'm an anti-federalist.
If the people that are willing to sit up there and serve, all right, are a different group than you civilians who talk a big game.
Yeah, but I'm an anti-federalist and you're a Hamiltonian. Like I should just challenge you to a duel and shoot you like Hamilton had.
If I was the one, it wasn't my group that got rid of dueling, was it?
It wasn't mine either.
Oh yeah, good point. Oh, now there you go, touche. Yeah, that was a touche.
But no, like seriously, I'm not a Hamiltonian. I don't like the idea of spend and borrow. I don't like the idea of his economic system. I don't like the idea
about an economic system.
Federalism over state rights.
You can say, you can say that all you want, but the reality is you need a federal system because the states themselves couldn't defend themselves.
But they didn't have to defend themselves against anyone apart from each other. I mean, that's a weird thing, right?
They did.
Americans, they did. The states were
They certainly did need to defend themselves, especially from the British initially, who were doing everything that they could.
I understand that, but I'm saying that, once the states was moving, once it got its independence and it was, the individual states, no states were trying to invade each other, were they? I don't remember Idaho trying to invade Nevada.
No, this is where I have to actually, we have the Commerce Clause for a reason. They were doing taxes.
They were doing a lot of hanky shit, and yes, there were armed conflicts between states.
Yeah, no, Virginia.
So is that the reason that you had to have the interstate commerce thing introduced? Keep people in check. Okay.
Well, no, and,
that makes sense.
By the way, to keep regular means to keep it regular, like it's free flowing, not to regulate, like they're talking about. Words have meaning.
The Commerce Clause has been bastardized. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, no, and I will argue that. I'll die on that hill.
But there was actually almost a standing battle between the state of Washington and the state of Oregon at one point as well.
Fuck Washington. They're a bunch of fucking sheep fuckers. Dude.
All right, so to say that there weren't...
I didn't know they were Welsh.
Too bad the Yankees.
You didn't know that the majority of Washingtonians are Welsh? I mean, I thought this was common knowledge.
It's news to me. I'm surprised. I'm shocked.
You're right. You are correct, Anchak, that the military oath is to the Constitution of the United States.
Okay, the Constitution of the United States. What does that entail? Should I crack it back open? We can take a look. Okay, so let's look at the Second Amendment. Militia.
Why do you go to the Second Amendment? Why don't you go to the whole thing and read the entire document if you're going to do something like that? But it was
you want me to sit here and read the entire document? Like
no, I'm not gonna read the Second Amendment because I don't have a disagreement with you from the Second Amendment. But there's a difference between what a civilian force can do versus what a trained military force can do. Okay.
I can still hide the weeds. I can still pop a cap in your ass. MC.
Not if I wipe out the entire area.
What, you're gonna napalm me?
I might.
Are you gonna push the button? No. Are you gonna napalm the Cascade Mountain?
Are you going down the hell out of you? He'll bunker bust your ass.
If when I was in the military, we were against all enemies, foreign and domestic. If we considered you a domestic. If we considered you a domestic enemy, then why wouldn't I put a cap in your ass or take you out in any way I felt was best?
What if it's not just me? What if it's a million of me? What if the United States is splitting at the
enemies, foreign and domestic. If you are an enemy, wiping out a million is wiping out a million.
Okay, MC, can I ask a simple question here?
Sure.
An enemy of what? If it's foreign or domestic, if it's domestic, then who are the enemy of?
That's where you're looking at the gray areas and you're trying to pick where the gray areas are. All right.
No, I'm just trying to identify. I'm just wondering how that works. When,
that's a good question.
You start trying to split
because it also comes down to we also sit up there and go the lawful orders of the officers given above us. In other words, an order to fire would have to be lawful. And granted, you have to make that determination. And there are times when there's gray areas where you're not really sure. All right. So this is where you're going with it.
MC, how many enlisted men, in your estimation, would put down their arms instead of fire upon their own countrymen? That's what we're talking about here. Will you fire upon your own countrymen if it's looking?
It depends on the circumstance.
I'm not wearing gray, dude. I'm not gray.
It depends on the circumstance.
Okay. Well, what would you do at Kent State? Would you be
open fire
launching or?
I'd have opened fire.
You would.
When they attacked, I would have opened fire. I would have responded in kind.
Yeah, but they didn't have guns, so
it doesn't matter. They opened fire. The fact that they freaking brought rocks to a gunfight, that was their problem. They decided to start the fight. They decided to start the violence. This is going to end it.
Yeah, but you don't have to shoot people to do that.
Yes, you did.
No,
you weren't going to stop them any other way. This idea that you were surrounded by massive numbers of more people than you are, that you can't sit up there and use superior force. Oh, there could have been another way. I'm going to go back to the tower.
No, you could just gas them. You know, gas them, for God's sake. Gas them all the long time.
MC, what you're describing to me is the fact that the British opened up fire at the Boston Massacre. They were throwing ice and snowballs at them. What you're saying is that was a reason to open fire. Well, that was the shot heard around the world, sir.
No, it wasn't the shot heard around the world. The shot heard around the world was Lexington. Please do not forget.
Fair enough.
That was a slightly more significant one, that one.
Slightly, I don't know. The Boston Massacre was a big deal.
The Boston Massacre was a propaganda deal.
Hey, writers be writers. You know what I'm saying? I mean,
but that's where history comes from.
All right, do not misunderstand me. When the people talk about the Boston Massacre, okay, and how it was blown out of proportion, and it was blown out of proportion. The British soldiers weren't just getting pelted with snowballs. All right, they were getting hit with freaking clubs. Crispus Atkins, all right, who was the African American who died, or the Black American who died, all right, at the Boston Massacre, had a club in his hand. All right, they weren't.
It was a naughty boy.
They were not just threatening them as go. They were told to disperse. They refused to disperse, and then they started the violence. And surprise, surprise, several of them were shot and killed. I do not freaking blame the British for that. I really don't, and I never have.
Oh, and I think it's amazing. Real quick, I think of all people, John Adams was the one to defend the British on that argument, and he won. And then the Crown still rejected the victory.
Well,
and
we had a mad king. He was fucking bonkers. He didn't know what he was doing. He was running around the countryside acting like a fucking.
Well, I just got a text message from my wife. We're good. I'm gonna keep going with the show, but a good friend of mine passed away that I didn't know about. So moment of silence for my buddy Bobby. Yeah, he had CPD or whatever, breathing problems and shit. So I guess he actually died. There's a moment of silence. Go ahead and continue about killing the British. Go ahead.
You want a moment of silence? I was giving him a moment of silence.
No, I gave him. That moment. That's it. I'm not gonna get all sad.
Hey, you blinked, you missed it. You missed it if you blinked.
Okay, but no.
Hey.
When it came to the quote unquote Boston Massacre as it was portrayed, okay, the effect of it, all right, was overplayed and was overstated in the northern papers. Many of the southern papers, though, took upon it as, well, they were rioters, they got what they deserved. It's played up in our history books, all right, but it's overplayed. The only reason that it gets the kind of press that it does is because at the time period, one of the people involved, okay, with portraying the Boston Massacre was Paul Revere, all right, and he did an etching, which is known today. But what the effect was overall, it wasn't as significant as John Brown's raid in the Civil War. All right, to the Civil War. It didn't have the same effect. Okay, it truly didn't. It did. The only thing that you could say about it is it was a factor in pushing several people toward maybe we need to be independent. All right, it did push it from that standard to a degree because of the propaganda as it was portrayed out. But overall, most of the Americans at that time agreed with the sentiments of the British soldiers. The Bostonians didn't. The Massachusetts colonists didn't. But overall, they did.
No, they were irate, dude.
What about the Virginians? How are they feeling about it?
A lot better rebellion, right? That's where it all sparked.
They were very much against it. They looked at the Boston and the Massachusetts colonies as a bunch of freaking hotheads that are trying to drive a war when they should be talking.
You know what? That's a great way to connect this conversation to our, the whole topic of the show. Don't you think the South Carolinians are the same thing for the Confederacy?
To an extent. I mean, obviously, the colonists that were the first to revolt were the Bostonians. Was the Massachusetts colony, was the northern colonies. That's true. Concord.
And it's the hotheads, right? It's the fire eaters, the firebrands, whatever you want to call them, the rebel rousers. And that was prevalent in Boston, and that was prevalent in Charleston.
Petulant children.
Is it petulant children? Is that your response, really?
It is.
I mean, we won this one.
Here's Ain't Jack. The Brits were also in Boston. Were dragging people out of bars and other places for drinking during the day as well, and it angered the people and it sparked fights and violence, which is true.
Yeah, this is never a good move.
Yeah, how dare you interrupt my day drinking? Like, fuck
but actually, I don't believe that we ever had the what the hell did you have? Where you banned all the alcohol. We never had that.
Yeah, what was it? Was it the 17th Amendment or the 18th? Anyway, what?
It was.
The suffragettes never got that far.
The 18th Amendment was prohibition, and the 20th Amendment repealed it.
We never had prohibition. Even though the women knew damn well that it was not worth it. So, our suffragettes weren't so uppity.
Our suffragettes. Your suffragettes weren't so uppity, but you spread them you gave them all to the colonists. You sent them to go reform the in the colonies. That's what you did.
Sorry, mate. It started at the beginning with the Puritans. I mean, you got the kind of dregs that got kicked out, and they were even the Dutch
dregs that kicked out. They were freaking in charge at the time. In the Massachusetts Bay Colony,
they were Cromwellian supporters.
Well, Cromwell was he was thinking about going and joining them.
Exactly. Look what happened to him. It didn't turn out too well, did it?
That's what happened when you listen to a bunch of freaking zealots from England.
Religion it's not going to take you anywhere good. Yeah. So you create a nation built on Puritanism. What do you expect?
We didn't build a nation on Puritanism. That was a very small. It was only one small part of one small colony.
Well, it had a significant influence.
It
was there early. It grabbed the land. It grabbed the resources.
There's a reason that they chose George Washington to lead the revolution, because he was from the state of Virginia, which had much more pull than Massachusetts or New York even at the time. So I think you're overplaying the Puritan element within the American Revolution. I think you're overplaying that by quite a big margin, actually.
Oh, fair enough. I will take your word for it. I mean, you chaps are more well-versed in it than I am.
But, no, that being said, we'll be back tomorrow, guys, and I think we're going to go more into the state of the Union, for lack of a better term, and the fact that I believe we are rapidly heading towards a second civil war. And I wouldn't even call the first civil war a civil war. I would call it a revolutionary war, but that's what it is. This one will be bloody. And I just don't know how it's going to kick off. Is it going to be Lexington shot around the world? Will it be another Boston Massacre? Will it be?
It'll be a crossing. It'll be an attempt at a triumvirate, and
it'll be hideous guerrilla warfare. Is what it will be. It's not going to be trenches and people walking across, and with little drummer boys and stuff.
You're right about that. It'll turn into
guerrilla.
It's going to be a Hatfield and McCoy situation played out with modern weapons.
Mm-hmm. And it'll get ugly.
That's where it'll get started, and then the military will be pulled in to quell the violence, and then at some point a group are going to be told to quell violence that the other group says, no, I'm not going to quell it, and yes, I will quell it, and then you'll see military forces fighting military forces.
Well, I'm worried
as society continues down that spiral, and as
a little bit like the British did back in the good old.
Yeah, basically.
Well, no, I'm worried. I'm more worried about the state of the National Guard and governors calling the National Guard out for their individual states, and then you end up with a clash between California and Oregon, for example. You know what I mean? To where it's direct warfare with National Guards, which is the state militia. Let's not fuck it up. I mean, that's what the National Guard is.
It will be interesting to see how that's portrayed out. But anyway, I'm sorry, I apologize. I do have to go. I am way behind, so I have to.
No, absolutely. We're gonna get out of here. Good night. Good luck. Don't go to France. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. We'll be back tomorrow with the news and a lot of bullshit too. You know how we roll.
Yay. Peace.